I've got OpenClaw up and running and writing code, building applications for me. And it took me a while, a few days where I was working with OpenCloud before I really felt like I was comfortable kind of taking this leap, because I really wanted to be diligent about the security aspect of it. So I want to show you how I've got things configured, and I'm just going to give you kind of like a quick sneak peek. And if you all have questions, let me know. I can do another video, can dive in deeper. So first I want to show you what we built, because it was kind of fun. I was basically just like, okay, I need to set up something where the risk is basically zero, or at least as close to zero as I can get. And so to do that, I was like, well, we should spin up something new and something that is essentially completely meaningless. And my daughter and I lately have been playing a lot of this game called Othello. And so I was like, okay, well, let's create a digital version of that game, which led me down a rabbit hole. And then I did a bunch of research on where the game actually came from, which was really interesting. And then we sort of rebranded it to be called Overbit, but the gameplay is exactly the same. And so right now I can say I am Sean, and the game is typically black or white. We're doing cyan or orange. And so I'm going to say I can pick one of these, and we're doing the bits, so 1 or 0. So I'm going to pick orange, and I'm going to say new game, and then it will create this game for me, give me a unique URL here, and it's going to wait for the opponent. So I'm going to copy, and in an incognito window over here, we're going to go to this game, and I'm going to be incognito Sean, and I will automatically be blue, and it is now my turn. And so it's not really real time. It's a polling mechanism, but it works just fine. So I can click here, and then in a second we'll see it's their turn. Yep, look at that. All right, and so you kind of get the idea. It'll take a minute, and then update over here. Maybe. Do we know? Is it still think? Oh, it didn't take. Okay, there we go. There we go. Anyways, goes back and forth, and it essentially goes until the whole board is filled, and then whoever has the most tiles in their color win. Okay, really simple. It worked. One thing I want to point out here is that it looks really good. I think it was pretty clunky at first, and then what I did was I kind of had to work through a bit of a paradigm shift, because right now today, typically the way that I work is early in a project when I need to do a lot of hand holding and I'm going to be deep in the weeds and want tighter feedback loops. I'm local on my machine using Claude Code. Get quick feedback loops that way. I like building plans that way. And then my drive is to move more asynchronously. And as I move to async work, I then start adopting Netlify Agent Runner. So ultimately, my next step here is that I want to get OpenClaw interacting with my project through agent runners, but also in a way that I feel safe and secure. And so I'm working on that over the next week or so. But what the shift that I had to kind of make was, it was a little bit goofy with the way this works, because OpenClaw for me is using my Claude Code subscription, right? But it isn't Claude Code. So it's almost like, well, okay, yeah, it's a different agent that is orchestrating the code, but it is using Anthropic models to determine what code it should write. So the skills should transfer, but I didn't know if they would. So what I ended up doing was and I need to go way more in depth and give some background into how I actually created my skills repository. But I have open sourced and created this Claude skills repository here. And this is a combination of both abilities that I want to make sure that I've documented to make sure that Claude can be successful, and opinions on how I like to approach architecture so that my projects can be built in a consistent way. So they work, but they also work the way I want them to. And so this isn't as simple with OpenClaw as saying like plug in, add, blah, blah, blah. So Instead, I wrote a Telegram message and told OpenClaw to find this repository, clone it, put the skills in the right place, and then in its memory, remember to use these in the future. And the difference between the first version and the second version were pretty astounding. In fact, I wonder if I can go back. This is Netlify. This is amazing. Okay, so I found a deploy that I could go back to. I had changed so many things so many different times and moved repos around and stuff that some of those previous permalinks weren't working, but I found one. And so at this time it was called Othello. We could start a new game, but you were playing all in one place here. And kind of looks more like the actual physical game board did, which was kind of cool, but it was also clunky on mobile. And so it was really pretty funny talking with the OpenClaw agent, because it was like, this is amazing. I've done a great job with design. And I'm like, no. I think it also told me that it took an hour to create it when it took seriously like 5 minutes. It was so fast. And so in between this spot and where I ended up today, I shared the skills, which included design direction. And so it just feels like night and day between these two. Oh, look, it even told me that Incognito Sean left, which is really cool. So how did I set this up? Well, one thing that I did early on, day one with OpenClaw, was I wanted it to help manage my calendar. But no way am I going to give this thing access. I'm not giving it access to my file system. It's on a different machine, and I am not giving it access to my Google account. I do not want to do that. So I created its own Google account, and then we just use sharing. And this model, but I see like two different patterns here. One is that API key-based model where you can have granular permissions and everything is controlled through a key, and it's great because then that's where bots really thrive. It doesn't always work that way. And in cases where it doesn't, and you want that person to not have this, either you don't have the same level of granular controls, or they need to use a different mechanism. I mean, plenty of cases that would cause you need to do something a little bit different, is I created its own account. So it's got its own Google account, which is also great because then if we need to spin up other services, we can tie them to that Google account rather than spinning them off of mine. So it has its own Google account. And then I was able to use that Google account to create its own GitHub account. And then we don't share SSH keys. We don't share permissions. So what I did was I typed, you've got a GitHub account, and it doesn't need to know anything beyond that, right? It just doesn't need to know, at least not yet. And so I say, create an SSH key and give me your public SSH key. And then I signed in, I added that SSH key. Great. Now that user can push to GitHub, and it has no bearing on anything I do. So what I ended up doing was I went and I created a new repository, gave it a name, picked all these settings up, but didn't put any files in there at all. And then I would go to, once that was created, I went to settings and collaborators. I'm in the wrong repository. Let's go over to Overbit. Okay. So I went to collaborators, and then here's my guy, Bill Harding, the bot, and added him, copied and accepted that invitation, so that when I texted the assistant again, I could just say, you have push access now. Here's the repository. Boom, go wild. You have your skills. And it was so fast and amazing, and it worked really well. So that's kind of step one. All right, so it's committing and pushing in its own space, and then I own the repository, and then that user has no access to Netlify. I add them to my team as a Git contributor, which gives them more. It allows their the pull requests that they create to run deploy previews automatically. So if I say open a new branch, add this feature, I'll just get that preview automatically. But I haven't yet added it to something that I am building for real in production and care more deeply about. And we'll have to refine some of those workflows there. But for all of you who are playing around with that, the one thing to note that will really help. So we've got GitHub set up. You've got the separate user. You own the repo. You own your Netlify account. You make those connections. And then the one thing you want to do is add branch protection rules. And that will keep the bot from doing something that you don't want it to do. And you can even, go back and I just prefer, simple branch protection rules. You name it towards that default branch. And then the rest is kind of just, how do you want to work? Do you want to require that they always have a pull request? And then you can tell the agent that and tell it to remember that. You can say require an approval, and then you are the approver and they just can't do anything until you have approved that code. Now, you might want to do that and you could hit approve, and then you could tell the agent to merge it and deploy it at different times. And so you've got a lot of control over that. And this here is really just more like, okay, probably a good idea to avoid them pushing directly to the main branch unless it's a project like this and it's totally inconsequential. And then just have it fit your workflows and, err on the side of being skeptical rather than being trusting. But I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the next step for me, which is I want to move on to, all right, now I want to get my assistant working on projects that I have in production. And I want to have basically, like, instead of the assistant being, so we already know that it can write code and do it pretty well. And that might be fine for like spinning up some proof of concepts, which totally fine. Great. But for those things that I'm going to take seriously, I have this assistant at my disposal. I want to use it, I don't know. And so I think actually, so the proof of concept is one thing, and I think that's going to be useful. But I think there's this other piece of it, which is I think there's going to be a lot of value in the assistant not necessarily writing the code, but being the orchestrator of all of the work that you're doing, helping you stay organized. And so that's what I'm going to play with next. And I want to do that through Netlify's agent runners, which I think is going to be, I have an app that I've built that helps me manage it. And I think merging these things together using the AI assistant is going to level this thing up. So I need to finesse it a little bit, and then I want to show you all what we've got going on. But as always, hope this helps you. Happy to show more, happy to try more, happy to share more. We'll see you all next time.